Hello everyone and welcome back to Jessie Kate Creates. I'm Jessica and today we are going to be stamping and mass producing. So let's jump right in. For this card I'm using two stamps, this gorgeous leaf from the Fragrant Camellia stamp set from Fun Stamper's Journey. That might seem familiar because I used it in my last video. And we're also going to use this large thank you so much sentiment from Stampin' Up! Thankful Thoughts stamp set. So throughout this video, I want to give you guys some tips for mass producing. And the first tip is to prepare your materials in advance. So here I have a stack of card bases. These are A2, so they're 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 side folding cards. I'm going to be making 12 cards today, but I prepped like 13 or 14 bases so that in case I have any mistakes, I have extras. These are going to be the card panels for the front of my card. They're 4 by 5 1/4, so they'll mat nicely on the front of my card. And this is 80-pound cardstock. It's accent opaque, which I pick up on Amazon. And you can see there, it'll give me a nice border on my card. Again, I prepped more than I will need in case I make mistakes. I have extras ready to go. These are the mats I will use for the inside of my card. If you've watched my videos before, you know I like to mat the inside of my cards, even when I'm using white card bases. Those again are 4 by 5 1/4. This is Nina Exact Index paper. It's 110 pound, but because it's exact index paper, it feels more like 65 pound. For this set of cards I'm making, I decided I wanted to do coordinating envelopes. So I've also pulled a little stack of, I don't know, maybe 14 or 15 envelopes so that those are ready to go as well. So now that I have all of my supplies pulled and ready to go, it's time to get on to the fun part, which is all the stamping I'm going to be doing. I just have one of the 80-pound panels for the front of my card. And I have that on a piece of just scratch computer paper to catch all of my excess ink. For this, I'm using an acrylic block because I'm going to be stamping out my own backgrounds in a bunch of different colors. And what you'll see is that I'm going to stamp this leaf repeatedly on my background, just changing the position of it as I go. And I thought that would be a lot easier to do with an acrylic block than with a stamp positioning tool where I'd have to constantly clean the stamp and reposition it and clean it and reposition it. I thought just using a block would be a lot easier. Now, since I am using an acrylic block, it's really important to me that I do everything I can to get a good impression. Because since this is a rubber stamp, if I get a bad impression or I misstamp, I can't restamp it in the same position, which, I mean, it's just paper, so at the end of the day, I could either flip it over or grab a new piece, but I just like to make sure I get a good impression. And the way I do that is by inking up my stamp well and letting it sit on my paper for 3 to 5 seconds before I lift up. That gives the ink time to really transfer to the paper so I can get those good impressions. So I've sped this up a little bit here, but basically I'm just changing the position of the stamp and just kind of twisting and turning it until I cover the entire background of the card. And I started with one stamp in the middle and then just kind of worked my way around it. And in case I get any areas where I feel like there are big gaps, you'll see like right there, I just use the edge of the stamp to go in and fill those gaps. And that's the first panel. Now I'm going to do these panels in a variety of different colors, and I'll show you all of those colors in just a moment. But another thing another tip for mass producing is to do all of the same step at the same time. So instead of stamping one panel and then adhering it to the card and then going back to stamp another panel, just stamp all of your panels at the same time, and that's going to make the process go a little faster. So you're just doing everything kind of assembly line style. Do all of the same steps at the same time. So something else that I will do here is I don't want to have to pull out the same ink color multiple times. If I'm using the pink ink, I want to stamp all of the pink leaves at the same time so that I don't have to pull it out again later. So I stamped the card panel here for the front of the card, and now I'm going to grab the panel for the inside of the card, and I'm going to stamp that while I still have my pink ink out. I find that makes things go faster. So in total, to stamp all of the panels for the fronts and insides of the cards, it took me about, I don't know, 40, maybe 45 minutes. I did not keep all of that stamping in this video, but in just a moment here, I will show you all of the colors that I used to stamp out all of these panels. But I did want to take a chance to bring you a couple more tips. The first one is don't be afraid to take breaks. After 40 minutes of stamping, my wrist was getting a little tired, so I put this project away for the day, and I came back and finished off the cards the next day. Another tip, while you're doing all of this mass producing, do something else that you enjoy. So I listened to a podcast, and that was really nice to get caught up on my podcast, but you could also watch a movie. Sometimes I'll give like a friend or one of my sisters a call. That's always really nice. So you can definitely do other enjoyable things like that while your hands are busy mass producing cards. Now, this next tip I think is like one of the biggest ones I can give you when you're mass producing. Plan your card in advance. I knew I really wanted to use this stamp after making my last card, so I just took some scratch paper and played with it for a while until I found a design that I really liked and that I thought would be easy to mass produce. And that just makes the whole process a lot easier. So now let me show you all the colors I used. So here are my completed card front panels. These are mostly Concord and Ninth inks. That first one was Ballet Slipper. This one is Honeysuckle. This one is Grapefruit. And then we have Marmalade. Buttercup, which is my personal favorite. I love yellow. Sprout, which is a nice light green. Parsley, which is a deeper green. Sea Glass. Aqua Sky. Now this is a waffle flower ink called Peace of Mind. This purple is a waffle flower ink called Happy Go Lucky. And this last one is Concord and Ninth Wheat. So those are all the colors I used. So I stamped all of the card fronts. I also stamped all of the insides for the cards, and now I will set those aside. Next, I'm going to stamp my envelopes. I thought about doing the envelopes in coordinating color or in the same color that I did the panels, but I am planning to sell this set at a craft fair, and so I wanted to do all of the envelopes gray so that I usually, in a card set of like 12 cards, I'll include 13 envelopes in case they, mess up when addressing, and so I thought it would just be easier to keep them all the same color. So I'm just using this light gray ink called Dove for Concord and Ninth. I stamped all of those envelopes, set them to the side, and now we're going to move on to stamping our sentiment on the card panels. Now for this, I am using my stamp positioner because if I don't get a good impression on the sentiment, I do want to be able to stamp it again in the same spot until it's, nice and clear and crisp. Now I kept this in, you'll see here, I made a boo-boo. I had my stamp platform on the side for clear stamps, but this is a rubber stamp, so I needed to switch it around. There we go. Now you're also going to see here, I took my time to make sure that I positioned this how I wanted it, because if if it's crooked, it's going to stamp crooked onto all of my cards, and that is not what I want. So I just tried to make sure that the amount of space on the top and the sides were even. Here I'm using the grid lines to make sure that that sentiment looks straight. And like I said, I'm really taking my time. It's so close up here because I, wanted to bring it close to my face to make sure I could really see it. Now, another thing that you can do is to take a piece of clear packaging and stamp on that. And you can use that because that'll show you exactly where it's going to stamp. So you'll see me do that here. I just line that clear packaging up in my stamp positioning platform. And I just grabbed the closest ink to me. I think it was like a random blue ink that I hadn't put away yet. And I just stamped that down to see if it looked straight enough to me. And again, I'm taking the care. I know this takes a lot more time, but like I said, if I stamped this and it was crooked, then it would be crooked on all of the subsequent, panels that I stamped, and that's definitely not what I want. Once I'm happy with the positioning of that, I will go ahead and clean off that plastic. You do not want to leave the ink on there. It's going to get all over you and everything else. Ask me how I know. So make sure you clean everything off before you move on to stamping. So now for the sentiment on these cards, I'm using my VersaFine Onyx Black ink. I like this ink for sentiments because it gives a nice crisp impression. Now, one thing you will notice, I need to ink or re-ink this ink pad. So you see it didn't stamp very well there. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to use my stamp positioner, because for this, I can just stamp it down as many times as I need until that is a nice, solid black impression. There we go. And then I will just basically do this to all of my cards. Again, you're doing all of the same step at the same time. Sometimes I have issues with my magnet holding my paper in place, so I'll just put a little piece of painter's tape in there as well to hold everything down and just stamp everything. Again, I'm going to cut out some of this stamping because you don't really need to see me stamp down repeatedly. So once we have stamped all of our panels for the front of our card, the inside of our card, and our envelopes, it's time to move on to assembling the cards. And this is the last step before they're done. I'm just adhering these to the front of my white card bases. I'm using my ATG tape gun for that. You could use liquid glue. I just like using my tape. Now, one trick that I learned from Jess Crafts is to put tape on multiple panels at the same time. So I have enough space on my desk that I can tape about 6 panels before I run out of room. So I've added tape to the back of 6 of those, and now I'm just going to pick them up and adhere them to the card base. And I love that tip from Jess Crafts here on YouTube because it just makes adhering the panels down a little bit faster than if you tape, adhere, tape, adhere, tape, adhere. So I'll show you me doing that to these 6, and then we are going to move on to doing the inside of the cards. Now, I have the front panels on all the cards, and I'm just laying them out across the top of my desk so that as the inside panel is done, I can just flip it over, and whatever color it is, it's easy for me to look up and grab that card so that I don't have to like flip through a stack of my cards. I'm sorry I didn't get that in frame in the video, but I hope that makes sense. You'll see me do that here. I just had to flip it over. I saw it was the grapefruit color, so I grabbed the grapefruit card. Same here. I saw it was that blue, so I grabbed the blue card and just added it in. And again, for me, that just makes it a little faster than having to flip through a stack of cards to find the right color. Okay, so once we've adhered our panels on the front and the inside of our card, all of our cards are complete. We have this beautiful rainbow of 12 different thank you cards with matching envelopes. I'm really hoping that this is going to make someone at one of my upcoming craft fairs happy. You can see we kept it nice and simple with just some easy stamping today on the front and the inside, but I think these make such a pretty set. And I showed these to my mom and she really liked them, so who knows, maybe I'll gift her a set as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video.